A motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Students?
Aye.
And directors?
Aye.
Any opposed? 2050, the agenda is established and moving right along to superintendent report.
Great. I just have a couple things. First off, I wanted to let the school board know, and a memo will be going out to staff and whatnot. The school district has been part of the Center for Collaborative Support. It's been a 5-member district with Tahoma, Riverview, Snoqualmie Valley, Issaquah, and Mercer Island, formed about 20 years ago. And it formed as an official nonprofit corporation. And the original idea was, as a corporation, these 5-member districts could get donations and, find revenue from businesses and others, develop curriculum, and do some other things. Over the course of the years, it's kind of changed and morphed, and in some ways it probably met some of those objectives, in some ways it didn't. The current leadership, we've been trying to really struggle with what's the purpose of this for quite a while. There is a financial commitment. We pay a certain amount, a dollar amount per FTE that goes into a pool. We've done book studies over the years and some other things. We got to the point at the end of last year where we needed to really make some decisions. And so Sally and I were the co-president or the co-chairs for this year. I brought forward a resolution or a recommendation yesterday, and it was approved with one abstention to dissolve the corporation. So there's no longer a financial commitment to it. There's not bylaws to it. We're going to still keep meeting. We find it valuable to talk about legislation and everything, but we did dissolve that corporation, and so we don't have that entity. The way the funding will work coming back to us is we took a 3-year average of each district's FTE, and then we took whatever that was, and then we'll divide out the remaining assets that are in there. There's only about 27,000 in there, so when you break that across there, it's not like we're getting a lot back, but did want to let you know about that. The other one is just quickly, because then I think the main report is actually the capital projects and long range facility report, but sometimes we don't bring some of this information to you, and I think it's helpful for you to know, especially when you're out in the community, things like, rigorous and opportunities for students. So just some statistics that I just got on our AP exams from last year, and this isn't, we'll publish a lot more later, but we were up 27% in the number of exams taken last year. So we went from 1,117 exams taken in 2023 to 1,420 exams taken last year. And then looking at the impact, this is what's amazing to me about our students. 64% and our educators, 64% of exams taken received a score of 4 or higher, which was an 8% jump. 91% of the tests received a score of 3 or higher. So we'll have more on this too, but some really great things coming out of some of those courses that really push the envelope for some of our learners. So that's my report.
Right? Any questions? All right, moving on to a board policy 1800 OE11 facilities and capital assets, capital projects, and long range facilities plan updates.
All right, so we will bring up Tony and Brandy to the table here and take us through. Before I just kick it over to them, just contextualizing this, quick reminder that last year as part of the OE11 language reviews, and looking at that, you had asked for some specific things that would help codify information coming back to you. So in there, things around utilization and enrollment. And so that's why you see a little bit more in this particular report than maybe you did in the past. And this has always been kind of the time of year when we bring forward the capital project update, because this is a good chance for us to showcase all the things that happened in the summer while people were away, and then forecast ahead. So with that, just want to thank Tony, Brandy, Matt, and our entire team. Some of the things we do in-house, some of it we have outside contractors, but no matter what, it's a lot of work. Either way we do it. So with that, thank you both, and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Riddle. As Dr. Riddle mentioned, for many years, I have come before the board in September with Tony, and we have talked about the capital projects that we completed and what we're going to do the following year. And we've combined that into a single report this year. So the three things that the policy says we need to address in this update are the capital projects, enrollment, and building and capacity utilization, as just noted. So there is a full report that is posted on board docs, but I thought for the ease of discussion and presentation, it would make a little bit more sense to try and do this from a few select slides than scrolling through.
1 second, it's putting the slides backwards online for our audience. So I'm just trying to fix that really quick before you get too far into it. Sorry about that.
It's weird that frontwards on one. That's weird. It's weird that it's frontwards on that one.
What's backwards on the other one? Interesting.
Yeah, that's what we have reduced to take care of it. I don't know.
Is it a Google slide?
Oh, yeah, no, it's backwards on that. Oh,
Okay.
Do we,
We cancel each other
do we
out.
want to add to this while we're updating? Do we want to add to this, a bullet point of, start, I don't know what we call it, but the elementary school discussion.
I got it.
I just meant in terms of background,
In terms of background.
just in terms of like the bullet points of the things that the potential bond. If you think it goes somewhere else, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
For those of us that get through 2 pages and
It's the one that was formatted with initial application.
We're having technical problems today.
thank you for.
I noticed the appendix, was.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Okay, so, the long range, we spent a lot of time on that long range facilities plan in 22 and 23. And the outcome of that was that we were going to we wanted to prepare for bond, that would look at completing the work of the 2014 bond by completing the middle school. We wanted to look at select program improvements at Mercer Island High School, and we wanted to identify any must-do projects. And I think during the long-range plan, we were talking potentially about the Clean Buildings Act and whatever other kind of clean buildings things came up. It also identified a series of cap tech projects, particularly at the elementary schools, that would be addressed. So let's start with, if you guys only knew how difficult from a technology standpoint my day has been, this is really just
Is it not advancing?
it's not advanced. What?
You woke up on the wrong side of the server.
Okay, so we're gonna start with the bond projects. I know maybe I have some electronic energy today that's just not working. So let's start with the bond projects. In January 25, the board approved the long range facilities plan. In January, we issued the request for qualifications from architects. In February, we received statements of qualifications. In March, we interviewed architectural firms for both the middle school and the high school project. And then late in March, we came back to the board and had a study session around middle school cost analysis, alternative procurement, and also approved contracts for both mail and the field. This is odd. In April and May, both teams worked on information gathering. And in May, at the end of May, we did a board study session that included the possible costs for elementary school, as well as an update on where we were with the concept design work. In June, we had a full update from both design teams. July and August saw us do design documentation and preliminary cost estimating. In August, we came back and did a board study session with another full update from the design teams. In September and October are planned for our community outreach for both the middle school and the high school. I've included, and this is sort of, and Andrew, this is like not, yeah, that would be great. We've also given you kind of a proposed set of dates for, things to come. So October, we're going to come back to you with a full presentation, of where we're at with the concept and what the recommendations are. We'll also be talking about bonding with the Piper Sandler folks. And then November, December, January is a series of approvals, with a potential election in April. So I just, so that's where we are with the long range planning. I think, it's proceeding well. We're feeling really good about the progress that we're making, and we're looking forward to coming back to you in a month and really sharing where that's at. The other part of the long range facilities plan last year was some cap tech projects. And we did a lot of work this summer. These pictures are of the new carpet at the three
Question
elementary schools.
regarding the timeline. We got it right on the October 24th for the concept design and bonding. Will that also be the discussion of sort of the total headline numbers, or will that be pulled from the August 29th, but those then have escalation costs? So when are we going to do sort of a deeper dive on what the costs are that we're looking at for a bond package?
October
And then-
24th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that would also be the time to look at how it's compared, comparative to other projects, also comparative, to what we got for what we spent in 2014.
Yeah, that'll be going back to a lot of, like, basically creating the parallel of what have we provided all along, because that was part of the June, August kind of updates, and then comparing to here we are now of where that is. So it's really a culmination of all of those things, and Piper Sandler's role is to really help us with different modeling of what this looks like for the purposes of a taxpayer.
And then for that, for like the taxpayer, are we going to be looking at just what the impact will be for the outstanding duration of the bond, or we can also be looking at what's in the long range facilities plan, which has potential other projects that would be issuances that would be made while whatever bond we're, might vote on would be outstanding.
We met with them, Director Sullivan and I met with them, late August or so, and we started those conversations. I think as we're potentially getting closer, maybe better understanding of what that modeling, we will for sure have the modeling of what it looks like now, what it would look like if we were to pass a bond, especially with the other bonds, then when they go off, what that looks like. So we can think about some of those, but what I hear you say is there are other things in the long range facility plan, elementary schools or whatnot. And so if we're looking at some of those being added on after the 2014 bonds are off, what does that look like? Is that what you're thinking?
What is important to me is to understand is if we put forth a bond, and let's say like the duration is 20 years, what are we looking at for any potential projects that are going to be additions onto that while that bond is outstanding? If we reach the conclusion that, look, like we're passing this bond, our expectation, our long range facilities plan is there will be no more bonds like made while that's outstanding. That's one world. But it's a much different world to say, no, we're issuing this bond and we're anticipating that there's going to be future bond issuances while it's still outstanding. So the number that it's going up to is not the number that we expect that it will plateau at, that we expect additional layers in the future.
So I think we'll have to bring it to you potentially in two pieces there, where we'll be able to recommend in the end of October. And then I'm going to kick it over to Director Sullivan to make sure I'm not too far over my skis here. But we will first be able to say, here are the places at which it would make the most sense based on that timeline when we have other levies and things going of when we might run bonds. In terms of exact dollar amounts, we may have to then give some direction to Piper Sandler to come back in the November meeting on that. May not be able to have all of that. I don't know, thoughts?
I think that's correct. We met with Ryan Swanson, Vice President Piper Sandler, late August. we asked that question exactly, and he is easily and capable of doing whether it be new cap tech levy numbers, to EP&O numbers, to whatever projects that we foresee in any size or state in the long range facility plan. If we want to add those on there, take those off, et cetera. Whatever you would like to see, we can run those numbers.
Set up.
Yeah, and I do think October will be a focus around what is the, collective recommendation to the board about the extent of the projects at the high school and the project at the middle school. Talk about some comps, both to, the like Washington numbers we looked at, the long-range facilities plan projection, and what other local schools look like. And then a discussion around bonding and what additional information is needed for the next meeting.
And then I guess another question, at least that I have, and I think the community members would have, is looking at the overwhelming success of the 2014 bond. People are going to say, hey, we got 2/3 of the middle school, a very expensive but very nice elementary school, and projects at the high school, for $100 million. What are we getting now, and how does it compare to 2014? So I think there's both two comparisons, like what we see going on in the area, and then how does it compare to a very, I think at least in terms of perception of the public, the consensus, a very successful bond. Is it reasonable?
Yeah, that's great input. Thank you.
I just want to make sure, I think I'm understanding, because way back whenever we had these conversations about, we have every expectation of the fact that we're going to need new elementary schools, hopefully sooner than 20 years from now. And the talk of seeing what we can do to stabilize the tax rate.
Flatten the tax rate, right?
Right.
So you're paying more on a current bond in anticipation of something else coming.
Well, however it works, but basically, and I don't know all the rules. I only know like home stuff, but like, will we then, are we going to be getting information on, whatever they call it in terms of refinancing a bond? Say, if we want to build or remodel an elementary school in 5 years, or, a few years after this project is done. So that's probably 7 or 8 years out now. Is there going to be a way to refi and pull that in? And can we get without going too much into detail and predicting the future, like, is that something that can be talked about?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
refunding is what they call it.
Okay.
Refinancing, but refunding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I think that's the interest, is in terms of knowing that there's future projects to come, trying to be able to predict the tax impact and keep it as flat for people, just budget wise, as possible.
Yeah, I would say, like, at least for me, there's like sort of two dimensions. Are these projects reasonably priced, or are they expensive? And are they priorities, and can we afford it, given projects that we know are coming in the future, while these bonds would be outstanding?
If I may, what I would ask of you, the board, is to provide those scenarios to Superintendent Rundle. We can get those provided to Piper Sandler, so when they come on October 24th, they're prepared. They have the answers for you.
And we have that one slide, however long, 4, 5, 6 months ago, where one of the proposals you came to us with was, do this now, in 4, 5, 6 years, do this, then that.
And see the funding that matches
And
that.
see the funding that matches that. I don't know that we need to reinvent the wheel. And it's all just, we're hypothesizing at this point, but it just gives us some idea of how we could do something like that without tying anyone to anything.
Right. Okay, so quick snapshot of work that was completed this summer. We did all new carpet at all 3 elementary schools. That includes classrooms, corridors, everywhere there was carpet that was replaced. I think it's been well received. We did a lot of color and fun. Tony's crew was also able to provide new teacher desks, which you see in that right-hand corner, right-hand side, for each of the teachers at the elementary school. A few extra scattered in there. We also replaced the boilers at all 3 elementary schools. This was a pretty major project. And we're just fine tuning that, but I think everything's up and running at this point. It's a good one to have behind us.
Great one to have behind us.
I mean, that was, if you remember the community meeting where people were saying like, what are the chances that something could happen? So this is a really good one to have completed. A couple other smaller projects, but no less important that we did. Each year we are building a stair tower at the high school that is used for the marching band. And so that went up again this year and will come down in
First part of November.
first part of November. And we also installed a system at Crest that allows them to have a secure entry. It's a very difficult building to replicate what we did at the elementary schools with their vestibule entry. So this was our interim solution that allows, the door to stay locked and people to be able to access. Anything you want to add about that?
No, I think it's been received. It's been a great fix over there. It's working really well with the students. I would add the tower we put up each year because we have such a demand in the stadium and the field space with, our marching band and football practice and soccer and all the different things. So it gives the marching band another place to practice besides just the stadium where Parker can be up in the press box. So what we've created is another area for him to be able to use for spaces like that. So that's why that goes in or goes up each year.
And then, of course, we did the Department of Ecology required stormwater facility maintenance with our goats again this year. Well received.
Can I,
With our
there's
rented
rumor that
goats.
we own the goats.
We do not.
I did, okay.
It comes up every time.
It comes
do
up
not.
every time.
Yeah.
We
We keep
rent
them
the
in the
goats
house.
for their service.
We dabbled in that experiment about a decade ago, put our toe in it.
These are rented
That
goats.
was
That's
not a good
Hey,
idea.
when I was a student at the high school and I took animal behavior, we got to choose an animal to train. And my sister got a baby goat from a farm and taught it to jump up on a barrel and turn around in a circle and jump through a hoop. So that was part of the course. So,
Yeah. Well, there's 105 of
And that
these.
goes
That's just.
across your grass.
they're right. No,
No, we rent.
okay.
We rent.
I
We're out
just,
of that business.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to, it came up. I just.
They live in Tony Center and
Yes.
It is a very green way to approach the maintenance in there. I mean, if we didn't do that, it would be weed whackers and mowers and, trucks going to the compost at Cedar River. It's a really great solution and it's just a perfect compulsion.
Right. And for the record, she came with 105 and left with 105. The goat that was traveling around on next door had nothing to do with our goat. So
Tony, do you want to talk about a few other things we did, like classroom door hardware?
yeah, so we replaced at the 3 old elementary schools. We replaced all the classroom door hardware, which was starting to fail just due to age. But we also were able to upgrade it to where all of the classrooms are able to lock from the inside of the building or inside of the classroom. So it was an added security effort that we no longer have to use the magnets or the little latches that hold the door open. So that was a big gain for us. We also did some ADA paths around the high school in Crest. We restriped all of our parking lots, kind of freshened up the paint, which is something we try to do every few years. We repaired fencing, lots of little things out there. We also installed our second charging station for the 2 buses in the bus, the 2 additional buses in the bus lot. One thing, when Brandy mentioned we bought teacher desks, they're all height adjustable desks. So the teachers are able to stand or sit, whatever they choose, their electric desks, and they've been really, really well received. So, yeah.
That's great.
Question on the bus lot, electric vehicle charging. So it looks like the design is planned for summer 2025 and then construction in 26. Is that still the plan? And then is there any opportunity to try, and my understanding right now, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we don't receive any grant money from the state. And so I'm asking about timing in terms of the potential to try to influence legislators that they should financially support those communities that are most supportive of electric charging.
Yeah. I want to get to that in our next, oh, that's okay.
Okay.
The other thing I just wanted to mention is that the, very detailed 3-year cap tech worksheet is included at the end of the long range facilities plan. And it shows you, really what we spend on all those projects this year and then what we have budgeted for the next 2. We also wanted to talk about what's planned for next summer. And of course, to get things done next summer, we have to start now. So, you know, in our minds, this is a 24-25, but really you won't see any results probably until the summer of 25. We plan on doing a full interior and exterior painting project at each of the 3 older elementaries. We have started the process for the partial furniture replacement at the high school. We have about $200,000 a year budgeted. Nick's putting together a committee of teachers so that we can work through kind of a standard for classrooms around tables and chairs and have an opportunity for kids to see them and teachers to see them and try them. So that's getting kicked off. We also, as Director Boats was mentioning, you know, we had the capacity to put in 4. Which we did. We put in 2 last year and 2 charging stations this year. What the bigger project that we're working on is getting new service brought in from Puget Sound Energy to be able to electrify the entire lot. And we've been working with an electrical engineer to do the service applications to Puget Sound Energy, working with their engineers to determine between, you know, the level 1, 2, and 3 chargers, how much power we need, where it needs to come from. And then our thought is we would develop, of course, we'd have to pay to bring all of that in, the district does. So we would work on some bid documents to be able to bring power in, get the transformers set and the panels set. And then we would do a small portion of electrifying additional stalls, but we've put the infrastructure in that we can build on in the years to come. It's also time for Mary Waite. So we are, we have our $2 million of secured funding from the county. We have our $2 million in CalTech funding.
When it comes to the EV lots, when you say like full charging capacity, is that assuming an entirely electrified fleet? I mean, are we?
At some point in the future.
So, I guess like one of the questions is, we haven't considered as a board, you know, to what extent and at what pace we're electrifying the fleet. Are we perhaps like on the charging, putting, you know, the, I guess, cart before the horse or whatever way it goes? Should there be a determination on what our fleet looks like before we build the capacity to fuel it?
I think there are a lot of discussions to come around that. And what we know is that Puget Sound Energy does not move quickly. And in order to be able to have power ready and available, there is a, you know, sometimes 2-year long process of the application and figuring out the power that would be required and the service applications and all of their engineering before we actually do anything. So we're trying to get all of that done and give time and space for the right people to have a conversation about whether more electric buses are coming. And we certainly wouldn't dive into spending a bunch of money unsure that that's the direction we're going to go. But we also know that we need to be ready in the event that's the direction it goes.
When Brandy mentioned that we had capacity for 4, Mercer Crest used to sit on that facility. So then that boiler room, which is now the bus garage, which is that same building, is where all the power came in. We had that's about all we could spare, because that now feeds Crest Learning Center, the maintenance and operations building, the maintenance shop. That power has been redispersed, but it's the original power that came in from Ford Mercer Crest coming through the transformer there. So that's really why, you know, we were able to do what we did. And as Brandy said, it just takes forever to get a transformer set. So whether we decide to move forward or not, we want to be ahead of the game. Just because we put the transformer in doesn't mean we'll put 36 charging stations in, right? But we'll be ready to go if we want to do the next 4, the next 8. Clearly,
2, none,
exactly.
wait.
So it's no harm, no foul at that point. So.
And my understanding is with that new state law about the school buses is that, you know, as the cost comes down to replacing with the diesel buses would be required to replace with electric. So it's going to happen whether we think about it or not. I mean, like,
Beginning of 2030.
yeah. Well, sure, but I mean, like, we may as well lay the foundation for, I think it's very far sighted of you to lay the foundation to start now to be in compliance. Yeah, I know.
Oh, maybe we'll get the money.
That's only 6 short years away then.
One of the things you'll get, I asked Director Sullivan this summer to think about, we're due for an update to our transportation plan. With Tony coming into that position, with being now head of transportation and a new assistant director, you'll get that a little bit later on. So it's on the docket for us to put on a future agenda. So later this year, you'll get an update on what we think. And that will be a great time for you to also have a conversation as a board, and weigh in on that a little bit more. So it's on the docket, just not here.
So I mentioned Mary Wade Pool, we're getting started on that. And then of course, the Department of Ecology goats will be back, next summer. Okay. Are you advancing slides for me at this point? Or am I trying and you're fixing? Okay, that would be good. Okay, so the next section we want to talk about is enrollment. And if you remember when we did the long range facilities plan, we engaged two demographers, Davis Demographics and Dr. Les Kendrick's company. Both produced studies, a lot of discussion, but ended up settling on the Davis version 2 projections. And I know I sound like a broken record, but I want to say this one more time, that, you know, the way you are used to hearing about projections and budget and whether we met projections is very different than how we look at the demographic projections for the long range facilities plan. When Matt's putting together a budget, he is taking in a lot of information, and one of those pieces is the demographic study, but he's also working to ensure that we don't end up short a number of kids. And so you may hear we exceeded our projections, but that's Matt's projection based on a lot of information. It's not necessarily the long range facility plan projection. So I thought this is a really great place to look at that each year, and kind of see how we compare. So this is just a clip from the Davis study of that version 2 table, and you'll see that come in later. Table 2, I included, Dr. Rundle had presented in September, earlier September, kind of the open enrollment component, which is playing into our information as well. In the next slide, that yellow portion at the top is those Davis numbers. And then what you see below is the K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and total district enrollment. And so you see the 22 projections, 22, 23 projections that were in the long range plan, what the enrollment was last year, and then a snapshot in time of where we were at the beginning of September. So what this is saying is that we are down 28 kids at the elementary level, spread over the 4 schools.
From the projection.
From the projections. We are up 49 kids at the middle school. And we are down 6 kids in the 9-12 for a total of 15 kids over the demographic projections spread between all of the schools. To me, that's pretty remarkable. But I think there's also a couple of other things to take into account. I noted the running start students. And then I also added the enrollment, the open enrollment students, so you can see that. So we really wouldn't be up 15. We would be down 25 without those open enrollment kids. And I don't have the running start information yet. I think we won't have that until.
How is running start calculated with respect to Davis? I mean, is it apples to apples? I mean, so can we just subtract those out and say that, you know, we're actually down like another 50, or?
I would have to look at his methodology, although what I imagine is that Davis and EDS both take into account a factor because every district has it, but I'd have to look at the methodology on how, you know, the running start students are factored in, because, you know, ALE and running start, you know, you get a portion of that FTE, you don't get the full FTE. And so I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I think that those both of those studies are based on FTE. All of these numbers are based on FTE. And so I think their projections in those previous years took into account the.
So it is, I mean, I wouldn't say like it's grossly off, but I mean, it's a little bit further once you then subtract out, you know, the 50 runs.
You know, in the demographics world, this is spot on. So I think we should all feel really good about it. And what it tells us, again, from a facilities perspective, is that we're tracking really well to the projections, that no adjustments appear at this point to be needed to the capacity of the middle school or how we've done planning for the high school, that we're really tracking very closely, and not just overall, but really at each grade level.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, then I wanted to talk a little bit about capacity and utilization. So this is a table that's included in the update, and it was included in the long-range facilities plan, showing the existing district capacity at the 4 elementaries, the middle school and the high school. Remember that those little gray bars are the portables that exist at each of the elementary schools. And nothing has changed in our capacity. We still have the same capacity, although it's important to think about if we move forward with this middle school project, that will change the capacity. Because right now we have a capacity for 1,296, and we will be downsizing to a capacity of 1,000. Then the trickier part is the utilization. So the utilization in elementary school is, a function of the number of rooms. And at the middle school and high school level, it's a function of the number of periods that are available in those classrooms. For an elementary school, because we are expecting a general purpose classroom to be used for anything else when they're at lunch or at any of the breakout programs, we expect 100% utilization of classrooms. For the middle school, we expect that they'll be used 5 out of 6 periods a day, and that teachers will be able to use their room as their office space. And at the high school, it is a very complicated formula that I would leave to Jennifer at Malem's office to explain, because different programs have different capacities, but it basically comes out to about 83% is the target. And when we talked about this at the last update, we had a lot of conversation around when a school is being used at its full targeted utilization rate, it feels full, right? And our schools don't feel that way now, but if they are at their full rate, then they do feel full. So, okay, this is the component that you asked to be added to this long-range facilities plan, is to talk about the capacity and utilization. So in this slide, this is a slide that's in the long-range plan that has been updated for this update. Again, based on the planned capacity, there are 19 classrooms available at Island Park. Last year, we were using 16. This year, we're using 17. Lake Ridge and West Mercer have 21 each. Their numbers of 17 and 19 classrooms being utilized remain constant. And Northwood with 21 went from 16 classrooms last year to 17 classrooms this year. And Islander Middle School has, in the current capacity of that entire facility, including 1, 2, and 300, has a capacity of 354 periods. It's being used 226 periods of the day. And the high school has a capacity of 490 and is being used at 350, or 71% compared to the 83%. Again, particularly the elementary, that's full, right? The target capacity meant art was on a cart. There was 1 special ed classroom.
Right.
So in that report last year, we also included the next slide.
Brady, can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm just looking at the numbers in a confused way, odds are. But so you said you wanted the middle school to come down to like 1,000 during construction. So is that
1,000 student capacity.
right? So like if our current usage is 63, does that put us at like a great percentage for like a comfortable? We're still not too full though, since we're at 63% now, or does it have nothing to do with that? And I should.
There's a lot of space at the middle school.
Right.
Right. That, Aaron could talk about this, but, you might have somebody who teaches health and somebody who teaches social studies, and they have 2 classrooms, 1 for each, right? And they have certainly filled the space that's there. But from building new construction for the number of kids and the capacity and projections of enrollment, what would be more typical is that 83% rate.
Right. So I'm guessing what I'm wondering is like during construction, we don't have to worry about the school being too full because we're a bit under capacity right now.
I think that's right. And Methuen has done a pretty extensive dive into if we take that 100 building offline, which you saw in that last presentation. Can we fit everybody in the remaining 200 and 300 building? And I think we can. It'll be tight. There's a possibility that we'll need a portable or two. But we'll cross that bridge once a bond is actually passed. But we don't have any concern that we need a sea of portables.
Thank you.
Aaron, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think, I wonder if, Jody, the 1,000 would be after construction is complete, the capacity would be 1,000, not.
Oh, okay. Okay,
I think that might be a nice better environment.
yeah, thanks.
Okay, and then the last slide is that table you asked for last year, which is, what does it look like? Not quite so tight at the elementary school. So that alternate planning metric assumed that we did dedicate a room to art and we dedicated 2 rooms to special ed versus 1. And you can see that Island Park by that metric is at its full capacity. Again, this is not taking portables into account, but in its building, it is at full capacity, and as well as Westminster. And then Lake Ridge and Northwood are still up.
And so that was very dedicated. What was the assumptions for the alternate capacity?
A dedicated art room and 2 sped rooms rather than 1. Yeah. The other table I just included in the report for you as table 7, because I wanted to see what the numbers were, is how the elementary school enrollment is changing per school, which I thought could be an interesting table as the years go by to kind of see how that changes. And just a great place to document all of this once a year as it relates to facilities. That's all I have.
This was super useful. Thank you very much.
And thank you, and I appreciate the updates and how you incorporate these and the rest to add utilization and demographic studies. So good job.
Thank you for your priority on safety with the boiler rooms and the doors on from the inside, and also furniture, because furniture does so many it's just such a big impact on what the space feels like.
Ava's been a member of our design team at the high school and has gotten quite the experience. Yeah. So thank you. All of our architectural hours and hard work.
City planning.
After this,
Hey, Jody's office as an intern. It's just as important to figure out what you don't want to do as what you do want to do. Bringing up the boilers again, is there, I know that was a huge source of work, maintaining it. I assume now it will be less, one hopes, with newer equipment.
Well, I mean, I think the comparison is what we have to do in the summertime when you break them down and work on it's more of a lot of crossing your fingers and hoping that they continue to run, because they're not a massive unit. There's not
In the old days, it was.
In the old days, it was a massive steam boiler that was, the size of a Volkswagen.
So I guess where I was going with this is there an impact on how you're able to use your staff on other things, because we have boilers that are.
I don't think so. We have more than enough of a backlog to be keeping us busy.
Oh, I don't mean that. I just mean in terms of efficiency, you're not spending your time at this.
I think it's more of an efficiency as far as the gas usage and the electrical usage than it is a manpower efficiency.
This looks different.
So what's that?
It looks different. It's very pretty.
Yeah, well, and honestly, they're very similar to what we had. It's just a fresh paint job that was, the other ones were, I'm proud to say they had a 15-year life expectancy and they went for almost 30. So, but hopefully
So your angst tended to be more of hoping it was gonna get by rather than having to use your people to make sure.
yeah. I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Right, okay.
And we would do everything we can do. And then at some point you just have to just let her go. And that's pretty much what we did. And, if something would rear its head, we'd address it. But, there comes a point where Murphy's Law, you don't want to do something and open a can of worms. So. And now we get that can of worms out of the.
Well, we have a little bit of
new
new
one
car
somewhere.
somewhere.
The new
New what?
The new car, always
Yes.
takes a little while with the new car.
Yeah,
The one with the lemon law is
Yeah.
We don't have that. but
No.
we have the new car.
Any questions, comments? Thank you. This is really,
Yeah,
this is
thank you.
really great information moving forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing like with transportation, kind of the same planning process.
Yeah. Great.
Great.
All right, thank you.
And then our next meeting will language review or anything we might want to change on that? Is
No,
that how
it's just, it's not a full OE11 update. This is just a segment of it. So
Okay.
you won't get any, so the full OE11 will come up later in the year.
Okay.
This is just the annual update that we have to give you per OE.
So keep in mind, if there's things, additional things that you want to see or other, keep that in mind, use this as a guide, and then think about how you might want to make modifications, including additional things, excluding the things that might seem redundant or just for the, when we monitor in the future. This year.
For next year.
Yeah, when we monitor it, whenever it is.
Okay.
December, January, February, maybe?
Later, December is 9 and tonight's 5, so it's 3, 9 and 3. When is 11? Do you have that?
So my 300-page appendix.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have time. then.
You'll have time.
You have time to review it, come with suggestions if there's additional
Well,
things.
it's
you wanna
actually
see.
longer because there's multiple slides on many pages.
It really scared me when I saw it, like, hey.
I just know for me that when we go to language reviews, it's like, wait, I don't remember what we did. So this was a great kind of summary of here's what it is with the changes that we asked for and it's how that's the direct impact on how we get the information that we're looking for. So if you feel like there's things that you'd like to see, you know, that's where we can make changes in the future.
Second meeting in March.
Okay, so
Plenty of time.
I will put in the agenda and tie it so I know where it is.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. 5:47, let's do, 2B, Board Policy 1800 OE9, Communication Support Board, Superintendent's recommended policy revisions to Board Policy 3205, Sexual Harassment of Students Prohibited.
Great. Now that, you know, we've received all of the updates on Title IX, that came about as of last year, the main driver for the changes on this, in fact, the sole driver, is an update to Title IX. Fortunately, because we have an inside counsel, Aaron usually also just takes a look at it. We begin with the WASDA board policy or model policy. As you can see, our policy was already different than theirs based on what we've wanted over the years. So this is the board policy that's coming before you tonight to bring us up to compliance. Following this meeting, you know, you'll have a chance to grapple with it tonight, and then we'll have a second reading in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, Aaron will also start running with what changes do we have to make to your procedure as a result of policy changes. So a couple things happening on this one, especially with some of the changes that happen there. So Aaron, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, just by way of reference, so on April 19th, 2024, the U.S. Department of Education sort of issued its final ruling on Title IX, which was not appealed. There was a subsequent litigation resulted in changes. So it became effective on the 1st of August, 2024. There was OSPI and WASDA worked sort of simultaneously to issue some guidance with respect to the trainings and what have you that are stipulated in the new laws, because there's changes in training requirements, while WASDA worked to create model policies that comported with the changes in the Title IX laws. I think it's important to highlight that this regulation applies to all incidents occurring after the 1st of August 2024, which means that we have to have a Title IX person who's versed in the pre-2024 Title IX issues, should there be events that happened before August 1st, 2024. So these laws are not retroactive, they're only going forward. And sort of the highlights of the changes, it expanded the discrimination coverage and changed a lot of language. If you look at the markup, you'll see that there's changes from the term sexual harassment to sex discrimination and sex-based harassment of students prohibited. So that is consistent throughout the regulations and legislation. And the idea behind that was to broaden the scope of what's considered sex-based discrimination to cover more things like sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, specifically pregnancy, and sexual orientation, gender identity, which in our state, there's also separate laws regarding gender identity, and we have an entirely separate policy, which is cross-referenced here. It also sort of alter the definition of what's a hostile environment to make it severe and pervasive, limiting a person's ability to participate in educational programs. But a lot of that you'll actually see in the procedure as opposed to the policy. So most of the policy work that you end up seeing is just updates to the language from sexual harassment to sex-based discrimination in terms of your definitions, and this tightening up some of the procedure and language regarding like for instance, there was specific change regarding school employees that witness or receive a report. There used to be language regarding being formal, informal, written, and sort of disaggregating what those reports look like. We had, even though it's not in WADS's model policy, we've always referenced what an employee's obligation is in our umbrella policy, so in the main policy, not just the procedure. So we had that, those are changes you'll see in the procedure, but also had to be reflected in our policy.
So
those,
I have some questions about that component.
Okay.
So for WASDA model policy, the standard is if an employee or staff knows or reasonably should know, they have a duty to, well, at least the district is on notice. And I assume because the district is on notice, it seems reasonable to me to tell staff, and it just seems reasonable that if you know or should know, you should say something. So my question is, what is the staff reporting requirement if we adopt this? And then I'd like to walk through a few hypotheticals, just make sure it accords with my understanding, because I think staff reporting is sort of one of the most important keystones for keeping our students safe.
yeah, so to be clear, I just want to highlight that the grievance procedures or the procedures will go into greater depth as to what requirements are. This is sort of just a touch point that we've always maintained in our policy versus the procedure. With respect to what employees under this language is whether if they see something or something is reported to them, that could be verbal or oral, any other way, they have an obligation then to notify an administrator or the Title IX compliance officer. So that specific sentence, which is, I think, I don't know what it appears on this PDF, but it says any school employee who witnesses or receives a report about sex discrimination is responsible for informing their immediate supervisor or the district's Title IX coordinator.
What sort of report, and then why don't we just also have, if they know or reasonably should know, including witnessing or receiving a report? I mean, to me, like the standard should just be if you know or reasonably should know, and then we can articulate what that includes. I mean, for instance, I don't know what a report is. If a friend of a student says, my friend is having a sexual relationship with a teacher and tells a trusted teacher.
That's a report.
Is that, well, can we then make that clear and also make clear?
I think that's, and this is what I understand, that this is like a high level. And then from there, it goes to the procedures and everything else. It is like, according to what we're discussing right now, is changing the language to be compliant with 9/11. And after that, then the district does the procedure. And this is what I'm understanding from what I met with Erin, because I really needed to understand this early today. The procedures is where all those steps happen, and that will happen after we are compliant with the law, and the district will make those changes. And then, is that correct?
Procedures follow your policy changes, because sometimes we don't want to presuppose procedural changes prior to the board making changes to the policy. In some instances, boards prior to you, and it could be here too, put a lot more into a policy, or it's replicated in both the policy and the procedure. You'll see that in some of those. But what you will see following this is as soon as you approve the language here, then we'll update all of the procedural pieces. And there might be some things that you're gonna talk about tonight that we listen in on that, oh, then we'll make some of those too. So yeah, so the procedure is really how we're gonna do it. You're telling us what you expect from the system.
I mean, I would just expect somewhere in the policy that it would echo what's in the laws, the model, laws, the policy, that I see language that makes clear that there is a duty of staff to report they know or reasonably should.
There's
So
more than
the
a duty,
law-
there's a law. I
So-
mean, they're mandatory reporters,
I mean-
they're obligated by law to report.
I don't see that language in this policy. I see it in the laws, the policy. I see it in Bellevue's policy. I think it should be in our policy.
Do you see it in the policy or procedure? Because I did review the WASDA
Well, I mean,
policy.
the policy is in the procedure, right? It's the P to the, you know,
Yes.
which is part of the policy that the board adopts, is also like the Ps, which are the procedures that go with the policy.
Well,
When I
you're,
did pull up the P, and the reasonably should know is again back to the district, and there was, I did reach out to outside counsel just to confirm my understanding, is that there was sort of a, it was an intentional omission, because there's a belief that if you should reasonably know something, but you don't actually know it, how can you report something you don't know? This sentence only refers to what you are required to report. And you're required to report something that you're on notice of as an individual, but the district maintains liability irrespective of whether or not we knew or didn't know. If one of our staff should have known, district has liability. The individual employee, if they reasonably should have known, they don't have a failure to, in the notice requirement if they didn't actually know, because this
Well, actually, I
specific
think that,
sentence
I mean, I think,
is,
okay,
this
I can
specific
take sure.
Can we let her
It's
speak
fine,
and then we
fine,
can?
fine.
this specific sentence has to do with the notice, their requirement to inform their immediate supervisor or their Title IX coordinator only. It isn't about whether or not we should act or should be culpable for failure to act because we didn't know something.
Well, I mean, my belief is that if someone objectively should have reasonably known and they didn't, they still, like, I think that's a problem. I'm not saying that they should be terminated because of a result, it is a result, but I think they should be suspended. I think they
Well,
should
the
be.
words that you're saying, they are being negligent. If you're saying objectively should have known, mandatory reporters, speaking as one, know what our legal obligations are and take them very seriously. And in my experience, way over report. Number one, because of legal responsibility, but also because of the circumstances that we put ourselves in terms of our duties, just morally and ethically. So I think you're conflating mandatory reporting laws and then procedures. And the question, we are welcome to have a discussion on whether or not we want a policy that's going to be giant, or if we want to keep a policy to, very clear expectations and have that much more of an explanation in the procedure. And if we're looking at it, if there's a better way that we could be reviewing these so that, we are fortunate that we have someone who brings them to us as part of their job. Board policies are board responsibilities. So, it could be on the board to go through and update our policies every year based on legislative changes. We have people that do that and bring it to us. If we think that there's a better way that the board could have an impact on our policies, then by all means, let's set that to have a discussion on if we're doing these, and if there's a better way we could be reviewing our policies.
I mean, I'm just confused that there's any question as to that if staff knew or reasonably should know. Maybe you have having language in there that makes it clear
So-
they have a duty to inform.
hold on
Yeah,
one
but
second here. Maggie Ty, and then I'll close something because then we have recognitions, and then I have a suggestion on how we might be able to move forward.
I'm actually just trying to, Christina has been trying to contribute.
I had a question just to know, and here we're talking about staff and just a question, since I'm not a lawyer, like who are the mandatory reporters? That was my question. But I know that. we
Yep.
have recognition.
So let's do this.
Yes.
Two things. One is that we can continue the conversation. Director Glitz, you also mentioned you had some exemplars that you, like some hypotheticals, and those might help to better flush out maybe what your interest is or for there. And then also, I think it is important to take a look at the mandatory reporter expectations because it's cross-referenced in this policy as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's smart and we'll
hit pause.
we're hitting pause. We're gonna do our recognition. And I just want to tell you what my question is, just if it fits into I'm confused and I think you sort of answered it, but I'm still curious. Why? I assume it's because of federal law, but sex discrimination and sex-based harassment rather than gender discrimination. I don't understand. Like, I feel like putting sex discrimination in there is, I don't get it. And I don't get it because I feel like it is a focus on behavior rather than unwanted behavior rather than on someone's gender identity. And I'm just confused about that. So I would love to kind of flesh that out too.
All right, I have both of those questions.
I have a question too.
Yep.
For having them on here. Just, do we need to update our language for protecting staff from sex-based harassment?
Yeah, that'll be the next part.
Okay, then never mind.
Yes.
That question.
And there may in fact be, just to like, there might be a policy, I'm not giving the right word, but a policy that comes forward specific with respect to pregnancy discrimination. That's recommended as well, but that's related to staff. Pregnancy discrimination would be covered under this. So that would be the concept. If a student were pregnant and it was suggested they couldn't take a class, that's illegal.
All right, we're just setting up for recognition. Does anyone need a minute or two? Let's take two. Well,
I gotta go out there and tell them.
yeah, let's take two. Do what you need to do and come right back. It's not really a break. Gently hurting for children.
I saw
All righty, we're starting with our first recognition. This is our catch-up time. We are catching up from the spring. So a number of these athletes are already in their cross-country season. Some of our athletes have graduated, but we did want to bring our MIHS track and field team to the board and give you some very well-deserved recognition. So beginning with our track and field team, they won 5 individual 3A Washington State championships, and the girls finished second in the state for the 3A last year. We had within this, and they're going to have a chance to introduce themselves, but we had state champions in the 100-meter hurdles. We had 800-meter and 1,600-meter championships won. We had on both boys and girls side, we had Gatorade Washington Boys Track and Field Players of the Year as part of that. And so a real continued growth of both our cross-country program and our track program. I have no doubt You'll be back here in the winter once the cross-country season wraps up. I know you've got your sights set on that already, and moving forward. So I'm gonna introduce Coach Wolf to talk a little bit about the season. Athletes will have you introduce yourselves, what you competed in, and then hear from our other two coaches too.
Thank you. This is an honor to be up here representing our track team after 23 years of coaching here at Mercer Island. This is the highest we've ever placed on the girls' side, second state, which is super exciting. We've got high sights for first this year. We definitely can do it, which is amazing because we didn't graduate any seniors. So everybody is coming back. Plus we have some fresh new blood, some freshmen that are superstars as well. With that said, this year or last spring was amazing on the sprints and jump side, and I'll let Susan do the distance. So we have Aaliyah Khan here who jumped triple and long jump at state, took second and fourth, and PR'd in the long jump when she was there. And then
she also set the score.
and she said, thank you. I'm the jump coach. I'm the hurdle coach. So Eloise Newman right here, she ran in both the 100 hurdles and the 300 hurdles. She was a state champ, as you mentioned, in the 100 hurdles and PR'd with her 6th place in the 300 hurdles, and also ran
I ran the 100.
the 100, yeah, sorry. And did some relays up until the state meet there. So it was super exciting on the jumps and sprint side. We also have some throwers there as well. And Susan, I'm handing the baton off to you to talk about the people who run farther than 400.
Well, I'm super excited to be here. And yes, it was fun being here after cross country, but we had a fantastic track season and we are in the midst of a fantastic cross country season. Owen won the 800 and 1600, which was amazing. Sophia won the 1600 and 3200, which is amazing. Victoria was, I was just looking this up, 3rd in the 16, 5th in the 32, which was awesome. But I want to say she went out and then won a national championship in the steeplechase. And for those of you who don't know what steeplechase is, I think it's got to be one of the hardest track events there is. You are running almost 2 miles, you're jumping over hurdles, you're landing in water pits. No one that I know thinks it's fun, but she finished in that place and says that was awesome. So she came away with a national championship there. So I am like super, super proud of them. And yeah, they're in the midst of a fantastic cross country season. So they are hardworking. They do so much that people just never see. And it's just, they're fantastic role models for both, I think, the track team and the cross country team, doing all the little things that you need to do to succeed at the level that they do. And they are just super fun to coach. It makes my job, my life exciting. So I'm just going for the ride.
Owen, you want to start with you and we'll work our way this way?
Oh, sure. Should I just introduce myself?
Yeah. Yep.
My name is Owen Powell. Yeah, wait, what else was I saying?
Here you are in school, any other, well, I guess we learned what he meant, but here you are in school and
Yeah.
anything you want to say about the season?
Yeah, I'm a senior and yeah, I'm really happy with the season last year.
And anything from this past weekend?
Yeah, I set the national record in the 3 mile.
I'm Victoria Rodriguez. I'm also a senior, and yeah, I love cross country and I like to steeplechase and track. I'm Sophia Rodriguez. I'm a sophomore this year, and yeah, I love track and cross country, but mainly mountain running and trail running. I'm super excited to see how the season goes. I'm Eloise Newman. I'm a junior, and yeah, I think this season was a lot of fun. I think we have a really good group, so I think the fact that everyone's coming back will make it a lot of fun next year too.
Yeah, I'm Aaliyah Khan. I'm a junior as well. I do long jump and triple jump. It was a super fun season. Hopefully we can win state as a team next year. Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say, first, congratulations for such an amazing accomplishments. I have a middle schooler, and seeing like the middle school, I think is like because they look up to the high school and the accomplishments and sort of the community effects of having such a strong program. You just see it everywhere in the community. So thank you. And, for that inspiration that you provide.
So join me in congratulating them first. And then if you swing right around here, we're going to do a picture with the board.
You got it? Yeah. Coaches too. Okay, I'll get you picture, then we'll take turn.
Okay.
I gotta get further back. Okay, are we all good? On me? 3, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Okay, parents. 3, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 4, 3, 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So the ring. I'm gonna take it.
No, not a problem. You got it. Yep. Here comes the telly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, our next group here, these are our Telly Award winners, and I'll have them introduce themselves and their awards. But just for context, Telly Awards honor excellence in video and television across all screens. It's judged by leaders from video platforms, television, streaming networks, and production companies. They are in great company, or I should say, some of the organizations that I'm about to say are in great company with our students. Other award winners last year, Adobe, Calvin Klein, ESPN, LinkedIn, NASA, Los Angeles Clippers basketball. And so it's not just a high school competition. This is way bigger than that. And so I want to introduce Mr. Michael Ketchum, who is back again, fortunately for us, and continues to grow our video production programming at our school. We've had elements of it over the years, and we're just continuing to do great things under his leadership and the amazing students we have. So, Mr. Ketchum.
I just want to say, to recap, this is our second year. I'm in the third year now. This is our second year of the program. In the first year, we won a silver and a bronze. We entered 2. This year, we won 2 golds, a silver, 2 golds and 2 bronzes. We compete in the student category, or they compete in the student category. In that category, there's only ever been one other high school that's entered. They're actually winning golds against colleges and in professional studios. They're not winning against other high schools. So it's for the second year program. I couldn't be proud of the stuff that they did. And not when I say surprised at the quality of the stuff they did, not surprised, and I didn't think they could do it. I'm just surprised that it works and that they're loving it. And we can't do it without. And I don't know if you know that when I started 3 years ago, that green room was a storage room, piled to the highest stuff. Now we've got, thanks to the district and CCR and CTE funds, we've got industry standard equipment, and we can teach well. And it's a lot of fun. The kids are great, very artistic, loud. Introduce themselves.
I'm Hadley. I started in media tech last year, and I'm in advanced this year. And it actually really grew my love for filmmaking. I'm planning on applying to film schools and majoring in film. And I couldn't have done it without this program. So that was awesome. And I love learning all of it.
And would you tell us what your project was, or?
Yeah, so I did a film called Disconnected with the distant parentheses, because it was about 2 teenagers who seem to be really connected over texting. So they're texting all the time. And you see the juxtaposition, they're next to each other and they're texting each other. And then at the end, you see that they come in to the same classroom and then they like don't speak. So it's like they're connected, but they're also like disconnected through technology. And it was kind of talking about all of that, like a commentary on.
Their film was a great PSA for the yonder pouch as well.
Yeah.
I'm Wesley. The class was really fun. It really allowed me to kind of be creative, and the instruction was really helpful, and equipment was great too. Like, helped me make a good film. My film was about a hiker, half comedy, half drama, where he was trying to follow a bear through the woods, and the bear ends up chasing him and killing him.
That was a comment.
Actually.
I'm Hannah. I forgot my award. I've been in media tech 2 years. I'm pretty creative. I never really thought I'd explore film. I ended up taking the class because of my schedule, and I ended up really loving it and taking it second year. I won gold like Hadley, but again, I forgot. So my film was about a man who lost his wife and how he is dealing with his grief.
Any questions or other things? Join me in congratulating.
You can watch all of them on MIHS.tv.
That's
They're all there.
Yeah.
We have a TV channel. We do a TV news broadcast every week too.
That's a great.
Come on, next, and we'll do a picture with the board.
Oh.
Come on over here. We'll see that.
Have you seen this film briefly?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen that. That was like fictionalized version part of it. I guess that isn't how it is. Comedy.
Yeah, there we go. There's people. Perfect. Yeah, perfect like that. Okay. Okay, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Okay, parents.
Okay, sorry, I was ahead of the parent. Awesome.
Yes, really time, everything. We're gonna do our, so you see the activities, and then sometimes they don't have.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen their specific.
Yes. There were last year some of our lead dramas, like some of the lead anchors on.
So we're just lining up for,
So they do. But it's also other, yeah. Come on in.
We're sitting or standing?
We are standing.
Standing, come on up.
Okay.
Come stand.
I won't touch you.
Perfect. So I want to introduce you now to our MIHS Unified Sports Team. Last year in late May, we had a fantastic competition here at the school. But what we learned from that was that this group went on to compete in the state tournament, and they brought home the second place trophy for the state tournament for unified sports in soccer. Our unified sports program continues to be supported by certainly our parents but also our educators, and amongst them are our student athletes. And we have students with and without various different abilities and disabilities who are working together, and couldn't be prouder. I believe, as we were talking last year, that this was the first state championship or state finalist there. And so Blaze, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about it, but just super excited for this group.
Thank you for having us here. So we are the Unified Sports Team. We play flag football, basketball, and soccer. Soccer, we did go to the state championship, and it was the first state championship game that we went to. Many of the people who are pictured in that photo that we just had up there have graduated and have left Mercer Island High School and gone on to bigger and better things, and hopefully will play college unified. But these athletes here are returning and playing again this year, but they did play in our soccer game that we won the state championship for. I also have a co-coach, Jamie Glennon, who is my co-coach, but also a parent of a student who has played Unified. And these are three of our athletes who attended that game. I was going to let Jamie talk a little bit about Unified. You want to?
I will talk a little bit about Unified as a parent. I'm a horrible public speaker, but we go for it. As a parent, Unified for my family and my son Taven was a game changer. I mean, Jen was a huge part of it too, but he has a brother that's mid-range autistic, and he had always had a great relationship with him, but it really intensified his understanding, his ability to just like communicate with him and hang out with him. He loves working with kids. He wants to go on and actually work with kids with special needs. He's now in college to go be a fashion designer for kids that have sensory processing disorders. So they want to like design cool, like weighted vests and stuff that are awesome, and clothes without tags and stuff that bothers people like that. But it's made a difference in his whole world. So like this program needs to be supported by the whole community. Like I would love to see every one of you guys at our games, at our practices, get your kids involved. It's amazing.
And where can people learn about your schedule?
What's that?
Where can people learn about your schedule and
that?
Information about most of what we do for Unified is on our the high school athletic website, and that has been updated recently to kind of indicate what three sports we're playing and when those seasons start. We do also try and push information out. We do have an Instagram page, and we do try and push information out kind of through the district webpage and through Instagram.
Great.
Can you guys talk for one second?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is Yura. He is one of our athletes. Do you want to say something just briefly about Unified?
I mean, it's been like fun, even though like, even though it's like, when you play, it's like, you think like it's gonna be boring, but when like it's sometimes when you like actually get in a game, it's actually really competitive. And like, I remember like I had like a lot of times when I cried when we lose it. It looks like we're gonna win it. Then like it turns out that we're losing, and it's like kind of like sometimes it like breaks my heart, and I'm like crying sometimes.
It is very competitive. Aaron, do you want to say something? Do you like Unified?
Yeah.
Do you like playing?
Yeah.
Aaron plays all three of our sports and has done it for what, like 3 or 4 years, Aaron? I think 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gavin, do you like Unified? Yeah?
Gavin's our star soccer goalie.
And Gavin got a chance to play with his brother for the last couple of years, who's one of our seniors who graduated and moved on, but did play at the tournament game with us and actually played so hard. Gavin's brother ended up twisting his ankle at the game because we played so hard.
Yeah. We had to put him in a goalie for a minute.
Anything from the board?
congratulations?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Where do we go?
And they'll come right around you.
Wherever you want. Do you want to stand next to Yura? Do you want to put on the medal here?
Let's give it this.
All right. 3, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Parents.
See you.
It's the same ones every year, and sometimes we do robotics if we have enough students to sign up, but this year we didn't have enough students to sign up. But that robotics kind of time that happens right now. But we do the same we use. Because we're like a partnership with Special Olympics, it's really supposed to be like high school kids. There are programs through Special Olympics to start getting kids involved in like elementary school and middle school. I have not done a really great job of connecting the middle school with that, but I would like to do a better job so that it gets the high school now ready to play people. Yeah. Oh, I know Jennifer, I'll talk to her about it. I can really.
You guys in the back, you guys in
All right, so welcome into our the spring of 2004 state champion lacrosse for 3A defeated Bellevue in the championship. As exciting as that is, also a perfect season, 18-0 during the season. And I know that a number of you will be returning this year and coming back. And of course, we had some seniors that we graduated on, but we always like to bring our athletes back and tell us a little bit about the season. I'll turn it over to Coach O'Hearn to talk maybe more about the season, and then you can turn it over to some of the players to talk about the state championship.
So I just, first of all, I want to thank, on behalf of the players and the coaches, thank Lindsay and Nick. Lindsay, the athletics department, is super supportive of our team. And I think I'm going into my 24th season, so I've seen a lot of principals, a lot of ADs over the years. And they're just great. They're super supportive and have been really helpful in keeping our program running the way it's running. And then obviously the parents are a huge reason why they're able to do everything that they do every year. All the volunteer hours we get from the parents. So yeah, it was another good year. It was 18-0 in state. We had some tough games on the East Coast, but in state undefeated, and yeah, it's great.
Spoken like a true coach, reminding the team.
I want to hand it over to Seth Gonzalez. He loves to talk about it.
Yeah, no, the last season was really great. We lost a lot of key pieces around the team, but that's kind of the story. Every single year is we lose a lot of guys because we have a lot of guys, but then we always come back stronger the next year. Yeah.
Excited.
Shane,
I'm just super excited for the season. I think we still got the tools in the toolbox to be great. You know, there's a little rusty right now, but I think we can piece together a great season. I mean, we've all played together since the first grade, so it's not really like people leave. We know each other. We work well with each other. So yes, last season we did great, but I'm looking forward to the future. Yeah.
I think another big part of our success too is, and we really emphasize this, is we have pretty much all multi-sport athletes. There's a bunch of cross-country guys, football guys, some people playing hockey. A couple of kids just got here from crew practice in Seattle. Golf. We love multi-sport athletes. And so I think that selfishly as a coach, I love it because they make better lacrosse players.
Congratulations. You want them to come behind? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that would work.
You guys speak.
Go around that way. So get slide up against the wall.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, between those two. Yeah, so we can see faces right there. Okay, we got all faces on me. Okay. Got a lot of people. Okay, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. One more time, just making sure. 3, 2, 1. Okay, parents. Coaches. Okay, good. Thank you.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm so out of season.
Just a couple other recognitions and reminders about the upcoming month here in October. We'll add in some more when we come back together, but things that will get kicked off, we have National Bullying Prevention Month, we have National Disability Employment Awareness Month, Disability History and Awareness Month, National Dyslexia Awareness Month, LGBT History Month, National Custodial Workers Recognition Day coming up early on October 2nd. And then Rosh Hashanah will be the first of the two very important days for our Jewish community members, and that will start on October 2nd. So others that we'll bring along, but we've got a busy month ahead. And before you know it, we're going to have the fall sports coming back here for all the great things they've done. And then we have Little Shop of Horrors coming up this fall as the musical. So lots of great things, but I'll leave that for Lucy and Ava to give us the full rundown in their reports next meeting. So with that, that's the end of our recognitions.
Does anyone need to take 5 before we resume, or, okay, we'll keep going. So we're gonna go back to 2B and continue our discussion on the board policy 3205.
Great. So let's start off with mandatory reporting. Why don't you talk about our mandatory reporting policy? Who's responsible for, how do we train for it? Why don't you give some of that background here?
Yeah, in terms of mandatory reporting, so that's the concept that we are required to, as school district employees, it doesn't matter if you're, a bus driver, a teacher, an administrator, like wherever you are through our system, we're all educators, we all have mandatory reporting requirements. So if we believe or have that a child is being abused, neglected, exploited, we are required to report it. We're not required to investigate, we're to report it to Child Protective Services, and then it's they then take that report and determine what the next steps are. We have a policy that guides that. It has to be done within 48 hours of being on notice, and ideally more quickly, and we keep a record of that within the district of all of our reports, so we can, if there's a low level concern that is reported more than once, just because we don't necessarily know what the turnover is in the outside agencies, we are able to then look back in our reports and say, like, this is the 3rd time we called or whatever it happens to be. But ultimately our goal is we err on the side of caution to report, because the flip side of not reporting can have such detrimental impact on our students. And at the end of the day, there our core objective is for their health and safety. And so that we're all mandatory reporters. That's the process. We train our staff every year. It's part of our staff trainings at the beginning of the year on our pre-service days. So it's part of our nuts and bolts training that happens every year. There's also mandatory reporting training that occurs through Safe Schools, which is an asynchronous training mechanism. So that's sort of the process for mandatory reporting. Does anyone have questions on that? The other thing I will say is we do training with respect because there can also be misconduct on behalf of staff. So we do training on professional boundaries, professional boundary violations, and also being aware of what those are. So what are indications of that so that we can report on ourselves? And again, we take those things very seriously. And we take proactive steps in terms of trying to ensure that our physical space, we work with Tony and his team, the various principals, to make sure our physical spaces are such that there's not ready opportunities to try to reduce the opportunity for misconduct.
Director Martinez, I think that was your question. Does that answer for you and any other board members? But I know you had asked the
No,
question.
I totally asked. I do wanted to kind of pause a little bit and go back, just saying that I think we're all parting from the same point of view, that we want to make sure that we protect students and staff. And this is not an easy subject, and it's very sensitive, and we're all really making sure that this is comprehensive so that anybody that unfortunately is a victim of any of this, we will protect them in a way that we will feel proud of being part of a team that put this in place. So I just wanted to just say that because I think it's important to say that we're making sure that we're following the law and at the same time being comprehensive enough to make sure that everybody's in our district.
Great. Yeah, I think it's like a couple comments. I mean, like, one is energy is mandatory reporting. So I guess like the follow-up to that is, why have anything in our policy? Is it just simply a cross-reference, or is it more protective than what's required under state law? And then two, I mean, my concern, particularly in looking at the red line when it comes to what the duties are for any school employee, is witness. I think we can all agree that for the most egregious conduct is highly unlikely. I mean, potentially, but like less likely to have a witness. And so then it comes to like, at least under our own policy, putting aside what may be required outside of it, is received a report. And report isn't defined. I go to Merriam-Webster, what a report is. It's a detailed account or statement. So to me, it's like, okay, well, if someone if it's one of those proverbial open secrets, that there's a relationship between a student and a faculty member, let's say, and everyone knows about it, is there a duty for those staff who know to report? I can't tell under this policy. I mean, assuming they haven't witnessed it, right? I don't know. I mean, I would if it said if they knew or reasonably should have known, then it becomes a fact-based, like, should have you known under the totality of the circumstances? I can't tell under the proposed draft here.
I'm a mandatory reporter as both an OT and a social worker. And like, if you have any inkling that a child or a person under the age of 18 is being exposed to any kind of like sexual misconduct or neglect or abuse or any of a bunch of other category of things, like it is your obligation to report it. So like this to me, like it's fine that we're having this discussion, but like, I'm just surprised at kind of the level to which we're going with this discussion, because to me, this is just a matter of like updating the language. This isn't changing our fundamental approach to these types of situations unless I'm really misreading it.
Yeah, and it isn't. So this policy though, I think it's important to keep in perspective that our 3205 policy isn't just about sexual exploitation, abuse, neglect. It covers other conduct. It could be that we were preventing, I'll just pick boys. We're preventing boys from registering from the culinary arts class because we don't think that's appropriate. That is a violation of this policy. That is not something that would be reporting to CPS, but that's a violation of the policy.
Yeah.
Right. So this covers more. It's broader. It could be there is inappropriate jokes that are being posted in a classroom by another student. Somebody wrote something inappropriate on board. That's a form of sex-based discrimination. If that's assuming they have a sex component, that would be addressed through this policy. This policy is broader than our CPS reporting. With respect to, I think the crux of this, and I hear you, Director Glowitz, is your concern, if I understand, I'm going to parrot it back, is just what does it mean? What does report mean? So we know what witness means when you see it. What does report mean? You asked earlier an exemplar, which is like, what if student B heard from student C that they have been assaulted at a party, and student B was the one who shared it, has no direct witness, and it's hearsay, if you want to use a legal term. Is that a report? My answer immediately was yes. Pretty much, if you learn of anything as a staff member that is suggestive that there's a violation of our policy, that's a report. Now, the language as written here is not specific enough. We can work on reworking that language. The only thing that I push back on, and that's because it was intentionally omitted from the Title IX updates, was that I did look at some of the other policies, and also the WASDA model policies. It doesn't say that an employee who knows or reasonably knows must report it to, because this sentence is only about what the employee is required to report to their administrator or the district employee. It is not about district liability or anything else. It's just about what they're going to report. And again, my understanding is that they
there is not language, nor was there language in our prior policy, that they would report something they reasonably should have known, because you can't report something you don't know, but the district can still be liable for something that should have been reasonably known. But it's a notice requirement. What is the employee supposed to do? And the employee, if they know or they hear through a report, and the term report is meant to be more inclusive than the prior versions of report, which were more restrictive. And so they just use sort of this bucket word, and we can work on the word or the term. And this is only about when they have this information, who are they telling? And saying that they're required to tell them. So if I'm the person and I saw on the board there, I'm a witness of discrimination, I'm required to report that inappropriate joke that was on the board to my supervisor or the district town line compliance officer. If I hear from Susie Q about this thing that happened third party, I'm required to report. If I hear the rumor, if I have a suspicion, I'm required to report her to my administrator, because that's still a report. And again, we need to make that term more clear so that it doesn't feel like it's a piece of paper that someone's reporting, because it's not intended to be that. It is supposed to be expanding what counts. But in practice, I'm telling you, like, if teachers know of something, or custodians, parents, they do tend to tell their administrators.
And that's related to what you're saying. So, and I'm curious about, because I know that this policy is tied to the procedures. So if we add certain language there, will be restricting how the procedures move, and like in the future, since they're tied together, and will that be beneficial to us in that sense? Because then there's less room to make a more comprehensive procedure to act within.
Yeah, so to answer your question, if the procedures are updated more frequently because of change in whatever the reporting mechanisms, like they're more malleable and they tend to be more robust, because they're the operational means of achieving the ends that are dictated by the board, right? So they're operational, typically, the procedures. This particular sentence is actually not in the WASDA model policy. It's in the procedure. We kept it because we had always had a reference, and it used to be the prior one was reference to a written formal or informal complaint. It was a lot more prescriptive. In updating our policy, there was a prior board that decided they wanted a reference to what employees were supposed to do in both the policy and procedure. So they mirrored on that one paragraph. So that's something that isn't in the WASDA model policy. It's only in the procedure. So we would make sure the two are parallel, because you don't want discord between your policy and procedure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I might say, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just two things. Number one, when I said, I was a mandatory reporter in my day job, board directors are not mandatory reporters. Certainly ethics is a whole different thing, but legally mandatory reporters is a very specific requirement. I'm sure that if board directors were interested in going through the training of what a mandatory reporter does to have a better understanding, just holler and we can figure that out, because there's so much online now that it would be pretty easy to do that, and then maybe gain a better, bigger understanding of kind of this whole world of it. And then I also, I know we're not really talking about changing the title, but reporting, it's noun versus verb. Like there's a report, like you're in class and you've got to do a written report, versus mandatory reporters who it's giving information and telling someone. And that's what it means here. So I would hesitate to change language because it's changing it for people who rely on it as something that they've learned in their profession. But I'm certainly open to talking about it. But to me, it's it's much better described as noun versus verb. And this is a verb. And that's what the obligation is to do, is to report it, to tell your supervisor or Title IX compliance officer. And that's the action that they're supposed to take. And then this policy isn't about what they're then supposed to do. This policy is about what all employees are supposed to do.
and trying to give direction to students and others. So what we might consider, Aaron, because we'll bring you the procedure next time. Now that once we better understand where you're going with the policy, but we might, Aaron, consider adding in there into the procedure side, the piece around the report of how people report or something. We can talk about that in comparison.
The other possibility would be to maybe add just a definition of report as it's commonly used in this context, like into the procedure part, maybe, just to make it super, super crystal clear. I do think it's very common usage to say report to use the verb report to be like initial notifying of an authority of something. Like I'll be like, I'm calling 911 to report a car fire on the bridge. Like I'm reporting, am I providing a detailed written, account of what happened? No, I'm just like notifying them. Or, like on a newscast, they'll be like, we're getting reports of rioting in the downtown area, like that's not detailed. So I think that's pretty common usage, but it would be helpful maybe.
Yeah, so it's used here, it's used as an app receives a report. And that's the reason I think I would like to see some clarifying language. When I read witness or receive a report, I see report, I go to Merriam-Webster, it says detailed account or description. That makes it almost seems like I have to as a staff member to have an obligation under this policy, putting aside mandatory reporting, but just under this policy, it's like I get a written report that says, it's almost like after an investigation has been complete versus what I'm thinking of, which is.
But that's how you're saying the definition is.
There is no definition.
You said a detailed.
Well, that's what that's the common definition of report.
But I think I understand sort of the concern, and I think I'm hoping that we're on the same page. The concern is sort of what does report encompass? The change was designed to make it broader and more inclusive, to include anonymous tips, which we get through Sandy Hook, promise, the third party, the text message that a kid prints out and pushes on their door. It's to encompass all of those things. So I can try to massage the language and you can see if that meets your interest. I do want to highlight one other thing, if that's okay.
Let me go to Ava really quickly because she might have something.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to say that I feel like we don't need to get too caught up in making it too specific, the definition, because Aaron, Dr. Bradley said, I think we need to keep it pretty broad so that people, when they're reporting, they're not so focused on does this count as a report? We just want people to speak up when they see something. So I think it could be useful to throw in a couple sentences about what it might mean. But we don't need to get too specific.
Well, I just want to make sure that it's not being too nasty.
Yeah.
Because with an undefined term, you then look to common usage, and the common usage for a report is actually pretty specific in there, which I don't think is anybody's intent. I mean, that's my concern.
What I'm hearing is that it's sort of I take your point completely of the Webster's dictionary definition of report, but what I'm hearing is that the intent of the policy and the language that's used is to specifically make it as broad as possible so that if a student mumbles to a teacher on the way out the door, student one is touching student B, whatever, and then the teacher reports it. I'm not hearing any confusion over the reporting term. But if you feel like it would be more comfortable if it were sort of maybe even a sentence included this would be, this is meant to, the term report is meant to be as inclusive and broad as possible. So to me, notification is as inclusive and broad as possible, and then people, rather than just sort of that thing of not what it's not, excuse me, not what it's not, but more that it includes any notification or even whisper, rumor, or as Ava was saying, just the tiniest notification, because I think that's what we're dealing. I wouldn't want to do any limitation language because I think that if somebody Snapchats someone, I don't know if the youth are still doing that, but if someone Snapchats someone or something, if something's happening, then I want that to count as a report. And I also want to count the mumble aside as a report. And I want to count the rumor of something that went down over the weekend as a report. I don't want to be, I wouldn't want to be limiting this is what reports are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we can wordsmith it. I think we're all Same objective.
Yeah, I think we have the same objective.
Someone else was gonna.
We have two more questions that are unanswered. Did you have one more thing you wanted to add there? Because the two questions are the staff. Sex-based harassment was one question, and the other one was the one around this new change between sex discrimination versus sex harassment that you.
Gender.
Or gender, excuse me.
Yeah, so the staff one, there'll be changes to staff policies. So I think I sort of answered that before. So that'll be coming. And then just with respect to the change to sex-based discrimination, from sexual harassment, it is a change in the Title IX statutes, and it really falls out of the 2020 Supreme Court case, Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia. And the idea is that the theory is that the language expands what is sexual harassment to include things like sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, pregnancy-related conditions, sexual orientations, and gender identity. So at the federal level, it is perceived as more expansive. I think for us, we read the terms, but we're not in the statutes all the time and the regulations, that it seems more limiting because of the term like sex, because you start thinking like male, female. It seems limiting, but legal is actually an expansion, and it's considered actually a win. And a lot of it may not sit right, but the law itself is expanding it.
And I would say, I really appreciate that it's there, because for me it was confusing. It does diminish the importance in, if I go by definition, by dictionary of what it is. So I appreciate you having that language still out it is explained on the policy. So,
yeah.
I appreciate the example of like boys being kept out of a culinary arts class, and that makes it, because if you were thinking sexual harassment, most people wouldn't even think of that situation. So that's helpful.
That doesn't happen, I want to be clear.
No.
But that's just the example. But it's also supposed, the language expands, so it sends transgender, sexual orientation. So it does expand the protections. So this means more likely though, that we may have situations where our gender inclusive schools policy run investigation, if something were to happen, we run in tandem with our 3205 Title IX. So it could be sort of parallel, because now there is a parallel in federal law. So they'll work more closely together.
Next one more quick question. Is this, and this might be not covered under this, and in which case I don't need any follow-up on yours. But like would like mispronouncing someone, or would that fall under this? The fact that a student is like, I go by they, but the.
Yeah, so it could fall under this. It could fall under the gender inclusive school. It could also just fall under discrimination.
Okay.
Because it's based on sexual orientation potentially. So, and then you have to look at what was the basis and sort of it's sort of fact specific to determine whether it's a violation or not. But that's where we have sort of more in our arsenal of policies that might prohibit intentional misgendering of a student or staff member.
I just want to thank the board for sending thoughts ahead of time around this. It really helped us to kind of prepare and think about how to best facilitate your conversation. So I thought that worked really well. I appreciate that.
So I just want to summarize where we are. This is the first reading. I assume we'll set it on for a second reading and get that additional information, have further discussion. I think this is going to be a great process to go through, that's going to give us an idea of whether or not we want to have a broader discussion on policy changes in the future and how we do that. Like if there's just other ways we can be doing it if we think that it's more effective. I thought this was a really great conversation with a lot of questions to bring up things and really helpful. Assuming that everyone just wants to be making the best, assuming that everyone is wanting to make the best decisions we can to keep our students safe as possible. And then assuming that we are doing that, and then we'll continue to do so. So we'll bring it back for a second reading. And then if anyone has an interest in learning more about mandatory reporting, just for more background, I imagine we can get that information. Is that something that we pay for? Or do we just have access to, like, for
access, you just let us.
Okay. So if anyone wants to go through that, it's a good thing to go through and, okay. Next up, we have full governance process monitoring, board policy 1800 OE5, staff evaluation, instructional practices. This is level 1 monitoring and level 2 for item 2.
Great. I'm going to bring up our Director of Human Resources, or co-director, I suppose.
Everything. I just live in
Co-principal, co-director. So Aaron Miller's here to give us our report.
Yeah, do you want me to, where do you want me to be?
Yeah, we took away the table already.
Just stand here, like a fireside chat.
Yeah.
I can just sit right here. I have no problem. So really, I'm here tonight, on behalf of Noah Williams. She's out tonight. She asked me to come really just give you a high level changes in some of the evaluation practices that are happening for staff this year. There have been some changes, recently that we worked with MIA on adapting into our policy. So, or into our practice. So really Danielson, the last Danielson update, Charlotte Danielson, who developed our evaluation framework, she did her first kind of rollout in 2011, or the one that we used before. And I think it's fair to say that what teaching and learning looked like in 2011 and what it looks like in 2022, when our next rollout was, is a lot different. You guys weren't even in school in 2011. Cool, maybe kindergarten?
No,
Not even then? All right, well, be close. Close.
You were 2012.
Okay. So anyway, looks a lot different. If we think about things that you probably heard about over the last couple of years in the board, around things like inclusionary practices, things like all the SEL work that's happened, the work around diversity and equity, a lot of cooperative and collaborative teaching, lots of different things that really have changed what the work looks like. And so if you look up on this slide, you'll see some changes to Danielson from 2011, 2022 that really better matches the work that teachers actually do now in a modern classroom. And so they also made some shift to the student growth goals. Really, the concepts are the same, but what those exemplars and what the concepts might mean in a modern classroom is different. So each of these has a rating scale, unsatisfactory to distinguish, that differentiates what each of the levels are. And so it's a lot of the wording in there that really is the substantive change. And as you go to the next slide. So just a reminder, the teachers are on 1 of 2 evaluation cycles, either comprehensive or focused. Teachers in their first 3 years are typically on the comprehensive cycle, and then they move to the focus cycle if they demonstrate successful completion of those comprehensive evaluations. In the comprehensive evaluations, they are evaluated on all 8 criterion that are developed by Danielson. And then once they've completed that for 3 years, then they'll go on the focus cycle, where the teacher will work with their evaluator to determine what of the 8 criteria they're going to be working on. And they can do that for up to 5 years. They can work on that focus cycle, and then they go back kind of a tune-up or a checkup every 5 years, or in that 6th year, to just make sure everything is good all across the board. And then they'll work with their evaluator on what that focus thing might be. Sometimes certain grade levels that are all in focus choose the same thing. So they're all working on the same thing together. At the elementary school, it's grade level. Secondary, a lot of times it's department teams. We're going to all work on criterion 1 or whatever it may be, to try to have that collaboration and that colleague work together during their PLC or directed times. If you look on this, most of our staff, if remember what I just said, is for the first 3 years, you're typically on comprehensive. And then for the next 5 years, you're on focus. So it makes sense with a lot of these numbers that most of our staff is on the focus cycle. One thing I do want to point out is any new staff to us, whether they are brand new to the profession or not, we will always put them on a comprehensive cycle first. So that's important to know. We get them in on the first year. We want to get a full sort of detail of all their skills so we can work with them. But it's not surprising that most of our staff, it looks like around 60 to 70% staff in each building is on that focus cycle, which would make sense. You're on that cycle longer. We have more experienced teachers than most places. So you'll see more people on the focus.
Just another thing to add, administrators and teachers, we've started the training process this year. All teachers go through every year a self-evaluation. Part of that self-evaluation, they can look at the framework, look at the rubrics as they do that self-evaluation, because for a lot of our teachers, the rubrics are due to them too. And so they do a self-eval every year that they share with their administrator, and that makes some of the conversation in their goals conference at the beginning of the year. What do you want to work on? Let's look at your self-eval. Let's look at your strengths. Let's look at your areas of growth. And then administrators are currently in the process of getting updated training as well on what the new rubrics look like, what their changes might have been or what stayed the same. Give us some time to cooperate. What I think at IMS might be distinguished or proficient, make sure that's the same maybe as the high school. So we're having some calibration to make sure that we're not missing things, but also administrators to learn from each other around what we're looking for. What are those exemplars of distinguished practice, which we're all shooting for and all of our students deserve. But distinguished, I will tell you, is hard. Some of the stuff is really hard and distinguished. I can think of an example where the proficient is that the teacher around communication is that the teacher communicates regularly with families. Okay, that's the proficient. The distinguished is how do we get students to be the primary communicators? So how do we get them to pull out their iPads and before a test, email their families and say, here are the things I'm really struggling with. Here are things I really need to study tonight. Here are the things I have. So the distinguished is hard, but we're all striving to that. And really it's a two-tool model. It's really about growth and evaluation, because really we want to grow. We are a learning organization. All of our students grow. All of our teachers should grow too. So you'll see that most of them are on that focus cycle. And I think that might be that's it. So any questions? Question.
My question's about qualitative feedback.
Again, on page 6 of your packet.
I do, and I think that it was in the report, but on the evaluation cycles, the new teachers go first directly to the comprehensive one. For how many years do they do comprehensive one and then focus? Or?
Sure, it depends. So if we have a brand new teacher to us, straight from University of Washington or Central or wherever it may be, they will go on the comprehensive cycle and they'll get an evaluation in their first 90 days. And then finish up on the comprehensive cycle and then do the comprehensive cycle for 2 more years. So 3 years total.
Okay.
If we have a teacher that has 2 years of experience or more in a Washington public school, a lot of times we'll put them on the 3rd year of comprehensive cycle. So they'll get a 90-day evaluation. And then if that all turns out well in their evaluation throughout the year, then they will go on focus their 2nd year. So it really depends on where they are in their career.
And once they're on focused, the idea is that they're working on areas that they want to grow in, that they want to improve. But if there become concerns overall, an evaluator can make the decision to bring that staff member back to a comprehensive evaluation instead of waiting for that 6th year. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
Well, and there might be times where somebody switches positions, moves from the high school to the middle school, or even from a grade, kindergarten to 5th grade. We might also utilize that because different levels, different grades have different skill sets sometimes needed. So we might utilize that, come back off focus early to the comprehensive just to get that updated kind of set of skills there. Yeah.
So my impression is that at the college level, there's a fair amount of student evaluation of professors. Do we have anything like that? My understanding is no. And then I guess the follow-up to that is, are there any school districts that have more student evaluation in a formalized way? And if we don't have it in a formalized way, do we have it in an informalized way? What does that look like?
Yeah, so more of a 360 evaluation. Yeah, we've actually been talking about this at the district level. We have some teachers that do it. There are some tools out there, but we are not systematically doing that. I think there are tools even local. I think Bellevue might have a tool that some teachers utilize. I remember actually interviewing a teacher for a position at IMS this past year, and they were talking about a tool. So something we could look for, but because they are out there, but we do not systematically implement them.
And do we know if there are any school districts that systematically implement, you know, a 360?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, like I said, Bellevue might, or it might not be systematic across the district, it might be a certain school
They can
or things
choose.
like that.
Yeah, it's by choice.
Is it by choice?
Yeah.
We have those different across the ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously discussion.
Get the kindergarten feedback from the teacher. Yeah.
But I mean, just like, I mean, surveys these days, like you go into a store and like, it's like, you know, you get like one of those things, like from like a sad face to a really happy.
Right.
I mean, evaluation is everywhere, and understand that any unionized labor force that may look different than what it does in a non-unionized, but anyways, one
I
aspect.
agree, and I remember last year, Eva and Asha mentioned that when they were doing the emotional social evaluation, that was, you know, one point in time, and you were like, kind of, you could not get out until you finished the evaluation or something like that. And just like, it was like our point of view and the way that we were seeing the evaluation, it kind of changed because of the environment. So I think that also has to do on how or when, if it's a half phase or not. I think that it is very complex. I think it's important to see what tools are there, that it is in a comprehensive that gives you a real picture of the staff evaluation. But I agree, I think that it is, there's.
Well, and I might wonder to that, if we were to do that, what would be the intent? Because there could be informational for the teacher, they just might want to know, and I might not even be ever shared with me. But to be honest, it is a little scary to ask your students or your peers or your supervisors for that feedback, because you don't know what you're gonna get sometimes. So it is a little hesitant for some people to do that.
And a very effective teacher might also be a very hard teacher, and that could be reflected.
Well,
in
you
the
know,
evaluation.
what's a good teacher to some is
Yeah.
not a good teacher to others, for sure.
I guess my question is of how much of the sorry, what's the big one, the cumulative, the summative.
Comprehensive.
Comprehensive evaluation, how much of that process is literally like a person with a clipboard kind of observing them versus these other kinds of data gathering?
So typically what happens is, and I can speak for my own practice, typically it's not about solely me sitting in for third period social studies and watching the class and taking notes. It's a combination of that and feedback, sometimes from students, sometimes from colleagues, watching them in professional meetings. Are they leaders or are they non-leaders? It's about innovative practices. It's about their relationship with kids, and you can see and you can tell pretty quickly. So what you tend to do is you try to take snapshot after snapshot throughout the year. And there are things in the contract about if things are going to go in an evaluation, you need to let the teacher know and things like that. But we're trying to get away from that old traditional, I'm gonna sit in my clipboard, yep, they did that, no, they didn't do that. That's part of it, but there's much more to it now than that. It's more of a year-long process.
Thank you.
One of the challenges that I was just talking about this today to someone else, you know, you hear in different sectors that someone might have 10 reports or they might have 15 direct reports. In our elementary schools, they have upwards of 40 people that they're evaluating between classified staff and certified staff. It's about the same ratio in our middle schools and our high schools as well. And you know, that is a limitation in our profession. I will say that right away. And it's not just about evaluating people to catch them doing something that they're shouldn't or they're not doing it well. It's about how do we help them grow. And so, you know, that's where we depend on others to help us with that, coaches or whatnot, to not be evaluators, but helping with that. The principals go through the exact evaluation process. They have a criterion that I use to evaluate them. It's a different model. But, you know, we kind of have a cadence with all the months, and each month that I'm doing my visits, we kind of focus on a different one. They give evidence or whatnot. I see emails come through. So it is very much an iterative process all the way through the school.
Well, let me just add that real quick. What's interesting is Danielson, when she developed her framework, actually never developed it to be used as an evaluation tool. It was about a teacher growth tool. It turned into an evaluation tool, but really it's about finding areas of strength and areas of challenge and helping a teacher grow to meet that. Now, obviously, if we're seeing unsatisfactories, needs to be a little more emphatic growth needed. But typically, especially in our district where our teachers are so great, we're looking to go from mainly proficient to distinguished, sometimes from basic to proficient, but our teachers are really good. And so we're just trying to help them get better as the years progress.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, to circle back, like, I would be interested in hearing about, software to allow teachers who are interested in doing, getting feedback from students, what tools are out there to streamline it, without imposing, but for those for their own edification, to be interested.
Have you guys had any of your teachers do that?
Yeah, I've had a few of my teachers do it like towards the end of the year. It's not super widespread though. Generally, it's like 1 out of 6 of my teachers or 2 out of 6 or something. So it is a pretty rare thing to do. And I will say like the teachers that do it are actually some of my favorite teachers. Like you can tell that the teachers who really take a lot of like, feedback from their students are the ones that really like try to improve on themselves each year. So I think it is really helpful for teachers to have that feedback from their students, however hard it may be.
And do you remember, is it tend to be paper pencil or is it a Google form or?
Depends on the teacher. I've had teachers do paper pencils and do Google form.
Yeah, I've had teachers do like Google Forms and have it be unanimous. That's like a huge,
Anonymous.
Anonymous. So that's what I meant. Anonymous, which is so important, right? And I think, yeah, I agree. I think students probably should have a little more voice in like giving feedback to their teachers. Like obviously teachers may not always want to hear what the students want to say, but like I see like more student feedback as like we get older. So like in my senior year classes, I feel like the students are more comfortable to talk with the teachers about like, oh, like why are you just giving us notes? Like, can you like switch it up? And then the teachers are really responsive with that. Versus I see that in like lower level or lower grades, like that may not be the case. So yeah, I think like adding more of that student thing could be a good place to grow on. And one thing is, yeah, our students do get surveyed a lot, like Christina was talking about, like the surveys aren't always like very effective. So like, I don't know, like focus groups, some way to like engage a student, kind of know the personalized story, like what the students really feel is really good thing to look for. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Anything else? All right.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no problem.
Motion to find the superintendent compliance of OE5 staff evaluation and instructional practices.
So
Second. Any further discussion? The motion is to find the superintendent compliance of OE5 staff evaluation and instructional practices. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Students?
Aye.
And board? Aye. Any opposed? That is 2050 and find the superintendent in compliance. I wonder if that would be a great topic for the superintendent student advisory group at some point in time, just because, yeah, it's about them.
We
I
meet
know
next week,
parents would
right?
be so passionate about that.
We meet next week, don't we? Our
Yes,
agenda
to
to
plan.
plan the agenda.
And our first SSA meeting is October 9th, so.
Not gonna rush, we're just saying it, that'd be great. Consent agenda, looking for we have no public input tonight, right? Okay. Looking for motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second, any discussion? All in favor of, I just put it, was not me. Yeah. Got it.
I took her.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda as published, indicate by saying aye. Students? And board?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 2050. I think it's the shortest consent agenda I've ever seen. Superintendent announcements.
Just 2 of them. Happy birthday, Director Lee, on the 18th. Happy birthday there. And then, Rachel, forgive me, did we introduce you yet, or have we not introduced you? Come on up, Rachel.
Okay.
This is Rachel Matthews. She is our new Director of Food Services. Obviously a Chartwell's employee, but started to join us last year. I'll turn it over to Director Sullivan to talk a little bit more about her and how she got to where she is, and then we'll let her talk too.
That's an interesting story. So as you may recall, our previous director sadly left employment with Chartwell's. which we miss her. That said, in the interim, we had 2 subs coming in, and Rachel was one of them. In the process, I think one of our first or second meetings, where we discussed the district needs, et cetera, I went, wow, she is pretty incredible. And I posed the question to her at the end of the meeting, would you ever think of joining us here at Mercer Island? And she walked away from that thinking, well, this sounds like more of a job interview than meeting with Director Sullivan. And it turned out that, yes, she would and did. She joined us from South Woodby School District, and we are very pleased with her and her performance just recently, but overall, it's been a pleasure thus far. And you'd like to add or say?
Not a ton. My name is Rachel Matthews. I did work at South Woodby School District for 5 years. Before that, I worked in a restaurant. I worked at the Old Spaghetti Factory for 18 years. So I've got some restaurant base, which is really nice for the high school. Just having a different concept. Yeah. I'm a Carp fan, so that's my favorite. But no, I'm excited to be here. I'm really excited to work with the team and obviously the food service workers as well. I'm pretty outgoing, but I also really like feedback. So I will be at the board meetings, but if there's any feedback, students, board, anybody, I appreciate it. I enjoy it. And I like kind of seeing what we can be creative with. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Those are my announcements. What's that? Oh, yes, and tonight's dinner, thank you. That was provided by Steph Boyer. Steph's been in our community in a number of different capacities. You might know her from Pebble. You might know her from the Presbyterian Church, but she's also worked in our district. She was a paraeducator down on Lake Ridge when I was a principal down there. And now she's working with our district as a wellness support as well. And so she does really awesome things from time to time. They tend to be random acts. We have no idea she was bringing dinner tonight. She shows up and brings dinner. So that's from Steph Boyer.
Okay. Board announcements, inquiries and reports, legislative reports.
Okay, let's go down the legislative world. If I can do my non-legislative report, first I just want to say that I went to the high school curriculum night last night. Since I'm you went as well. But I thought that Principal Wold and his staff and educators did a fantastic job. Like it went really smoothly, and I felt like it really added a lot to sort of my understanding of school. But I especially want to point out that Ava and Lucy did a very fantastic job. They were in charge of getting parents to leave whatever classroom they were trying to talk to the teacher and get to the next classroom. And so every time there was a bell break, we got to hear them make a little announcement, and it really added so much more. And it was, just respect to the principal. It's much more interesting than listening to the principal tell us what to do. But you two did a fantastic job last night. It was really entertaining. Thank you. So ledger report, I went to the WASA General Assembly last weekend. And we went through the agenda. Went through the handbook and worked through things. As a little background to this, as we talked about before, Christine and I have been working closely with the legislative directors of East Side school districts to really formulate a sort of strategy to combat some amendments that were coming through from more conservative school districts, maybe to try to limit, to really, ramp up the parental choice and so we're looking for not choice, but ramp up like the parental control and ramp down like the DEI protections in the WASDA handbook. And we worked very hard for many hours with these districts and dividing up who would speak about what if we needed to, and just like really getting a formula, a plan of attack. And in the end, it all went extremely smoothly. And I am choosing to believe that that is because when the initial ones came up, we had a lot of speakers, in support of the things that we wanted to pass or against the things we didn't want to pass, and had a pretty united front. Otherwise, I would have to believe that we've done dozens of hours of work for no reason. So I'm just going to choose to believe it first. One thing it did do, of course, is all these meetings really tighten the bonds with the other east side school districts. So like I ran into someone from the Bellevue School District at a thing, the other day, and, you know, we immediately, like, we worked together, we talked about like coordinating on something else, and it was just like a way to really reach out and, build the capacity and the sort of like functioning of our school district by making connections with the boards of other, school boards. So anyway, that went as well as it possibly could have, because we were scheduled to be there for 2 days and we went through the entire handbook in 1 day. So we were released after one long day and I got my Saturday back. So that's a win for everyone.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Last year, I can't remember what the motion's called, where you're calling the vote, like cutting off the discussion.
It's like the parliamentary stuff.
Yeah, whatever it is,
Right.
there was a lot of that. Like,
There,
so kind of-
so Weston had taken a preventive step and brought on a parliamentarian who had sent out information ahead of time to sort of say, you know, this is how it's gonna work. This is how, and it was a very entertaining and informative video, like sort of like the parliament procedures. And he was at the dais at the raid. And in the end wasn't needed as much because they'd also done a lot of preemptive work to try to put that off.
And the president also didn't allow it.
And the president also did not allow it.
I did not know that there was such a thing as a professional parliamentarian.
Oh my God, there is. He was. I'll send you the link to the video. It was hilarious.
We go to Robert's.
Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah. It's like a special.
All right, well,
Robert's
that's
Rules
out
of
of here.
Yeah, it was really, really great. And I appreciated like the collaboration and coordination with the other districts. And it's working out fantastically well. Our trial run of having 2 legislative directors, I feel like it's a lot of work for one person, especially in the last several weeks. And Christine and I have been dividing up the work accordingly. And so everything went very well there, except for the student bylaw proposal that we had wanted to pass. Unfortunately, that did not pass with a 2/3 majority. It passed with a 54%, I believe. So, you know, we live to fight another day or find another way around it. I do appreciate Ava and Lucy's, April and Lucy's input on that when I was looking for it a few weeks ago. You know, we'll try again. But unfortunately, it did not.
And so I have not had the opportunity to ask questions after because I had an intent to get to it in my question. But anyway, so that one that did not pass, do you know what why? Like, were there people that talked, I don't know, were opposing, or were there any, or you just
Votes. I think it was just votes. Like, I think that there was strong support to pass it. But I think that, you know, it was trying something new instead of staying status quo. So people were just status quoing it.
When is the next time that people be able to vote on it again? Would it be next year, like next?
Yeah, probably the next big step is, like connecting with WASD board members and asking them to move the conversation over within the WASD board. If we want, or it would be next year and this year, and that cycle, Christina and I will be more up on the amendment cycle and, coordinate with the other board members and try to get stuff up.
But I will actually add that, and I don't know who proposed it and who was involved, but the whole purpose of this policy is that students are involved.
Right.
And that you say how much time you're willing to commit in those meetings, because I know that you're high schoolers, juniors and seniors going to college, like your time commitment is a lot. So also, if you think that this is for us to keep putting it forward, which I believe that your voice matters a lot and should be there, it should look different. And it's the students to the ones who should be helping draft this. And maybe this is something that we can take back to us and say, maybe during our meeting in November with them, that you have focus group and you develop the policy. I think that it should be something more that you can say what I think is your voice definitely, and how you want to have your voice out there with us. So if that's okay with you, I will definitely help you reach out and make that then.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. And then the only other thing is I went to an event in the recent past time with our 41st district representatives. So Thomason, Neelan Tai, and Lisa Woman. So it was nice to connect with them and just like keep them, you know, Thomason and Lisa Wellman are both very involved in our education legislation, of course. So just more a way of, keeping our district's priorities at top of their mind and making connections and showing support. And, they recognized me as one of the school board directors, so like they knew that I was there, and they knew that
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a busy couple weeks in the legislative position. Looking forward to a quiet time before November. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to a couple weeks of quiet time. Great, thank you. Other reports, students, you guys have anything? I know it's your unofficial. Asking if there's anything.
Poco weekend is this weekend.
How is that working with the schedule this year?
Definitely some complaints. Most of the complaints are like, so like obviously like it's inconvenient that the game is like a week after the dance, but like the bigger concern that I've been hearing at least from students are like, is the fact that the dance is in September. And so like people are like scrambling to like find the groups, like make plans, and yeah, but it's okay, it is what it is.
So there's also been a concern about next year, the week after it'll go instead, but still been going relatively well.
Yeah. I hope ASB can like profit, because like, as we know, like the dance culture has like really deteriorated a lot. So that's like been a big thing that like leadership has been trying to do. So I hope it like turns out well this year. And my group is going, so the parents made us all go, so no, but yeah.
What's the lighting like for the dances? Like,
The lighting?
Well, I mean, like, it just seems like there's a lot of like, I mean, when I like go to concerts, I mean, like, lighting makes a big difference, and like we have like a pretty good like tech department, so it's like just a thought to put out there that like there could be like some cool, maybe improvements to lighting. Yeah, well, I mean, like concerts these days, like a lot of the concert is like the light
I
production.
don't think the expectation should be that high.
No, it's not level, like, the bar is pretty, yeah, well, they have it in the gym, they like usually like put the black carpets on the floor, so it's pretty dark in there, they turn off the lights, and they add, I don't really pay attention too much to the decorations, but like, they'll sometimes have lights on the walls, I think people pay more attention. Yeah, also take videos, and like, people I think pay more attention, yeah, people pay more attention on like who's there and like what activities there are. I remember 2 years ago, they had like blow up things, so they had a giant like bowling thing, and it was like blow up like pins that were like the size of like a human, and like huge balls that you could like throw at them. So that was that went well, but I don't think they had it last year, so that's probably also like contributed to the decrease. And I don't know, this year they started selling the tickets online, so yeah, I don't know.
I think the online has been a little hard for some people, it's a little more difficult to figure out, and then I don't know, I've heard people complain about not having a physical ticket for whatever reason.
Yeah. I think they still get a physical ticket, but I think they like, you pick it up like a week before. So it's just like a different procedure.
They would pick it up before.
Yeah, but I don't think they're selling it at the door. Well, that's what they claim, but selling tickets at the door, so I don't know. Yeah, we'll report on that.
Why does the schedule change? Why is the schedule change?
holidays.
Because of like the holidays?
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult here. Yeah.
Thanks, Christine. My reports are more on the personal basis. As a parent, I went to curriculum night of both middle school and high school. I will say that I love curriculum nights. It's one of my favorite times because I really can experience kind of in a different way the way that school goes and the teachers. So I really appreciate that happening. Both went really well. I will say that as a parent also, I had to pick up one of my kids in the middle school for a period that I had to wait a little bit for 30 minutes. And I have learned that I have to put a book again in my purse because I was there, and then all the students were walking like, I cannot take my phone out. It was so hard. So now they're very great. So I'm really happy. So it was very interesting. And then in the high school, we had the curriculum night, and everything was digital. So then all the parents were immediately looking at them in their phones and like, that's interesting. And the teachers did comment that they have not seen a phone out in the school until the parents arrive. But they did also comment that they really appreciate not having phones in the classroom, and for the teachers, they were working very well. Some parents were like, they kind of quiz the community and they were mixed feelings, but the teachers, all of that said that it was a different engagement. So it's good to hear that feedback in that sense. And now you all have to carry a book your purse or your bags, because it is very difficult to wait and model behavior. So yeah.
Yeah, so my only kind of meeting to report is that we met this afternoon. Fred and Dan and I met just for the first conversation to touch on planning how we're going to be recruiting and creating an application for people interested in serving on the naming committee. So the committee to come up with a policy about naming school facilities. So that was very productive. And then my own like personal update is I just started yesterday my first semester of my PhD program at University of Washington. And it's been fascinating actually from a technology standpoint, because it's literally impossible to attend a class without having a laptop or a phone, laptop better. The assumption is that everybody has that technology open and active at like every minute of the class, which is very different from the last time that I was a student. And as I shared on social media, yesterday was my first day of my 26th year of education. So it's like a little like, no, but I thought about it. That is very different. Although interestingly, walking around UW, I actually don't see students like lost in their phones, right? Unless they're navigating because they're lost. And also I'm now experiencing exploring boundaries around AI from the student perspective. So it's been interesting, like it's been addressed in every single class, whether or not you can use AI and how can you use it. Please don't cheat by sticking the whole problem in, a statistics problem into it, but it's okay to Google how to do a certain type of problem, and Google, of course, is using AI. So where do you draw that line? So it's just kind of interesting food for thought.
Yeah, so like Jody and Christina, I was also at MIHS curriculum night. There's a few observations echoing what Christina said. I also heard from teachers that the cell phone policy has been a huge success, according to one that, at least as far as they can tell from a teacher perspective, uniformly liked. And an anecdote to that is for the science cards, some of the teachers used to have bells on them because students would be staring at their phones. And now they have taken the bells off the cards because students are looking out at the world. So I think, very heartening, hearing like the passion in the background for the teachers, very uplifting, seeing the attendance by parents. I mean, uniformly, like most of the seats in each class are filled. So I think that's remarkable and a testament to the involvement and education in the community. The one thing that perhaps that we can drill down upon is, I think many teachers, if not almost all at the freshman level, remarked upon the transition and the difference from middle school. So I think there's a question of it, that's just sort of the natural transition, or if there's things that we could perhaps be doing at a systems level to prepare and to ease that transition. But yeah, it was good. And then piggybacking on what Maggie Ty said, I think there'll be something soon, being put out in terms of soliciting interest for people who are going to be on the naming committee. And then the three of us, Maggie, Ty, me, and Fred, will reconvene, look over those, and then like the committee will be announced, and we'll get to business.
Great. Thank you. And you? I get to go to Parents Weekend next week, but I don't get to go to classes or anything. Maybe I
You can blend in.
Blend in. Anyways, no, I know it was a quiet couple weeks for me. So, school wise, that's it. 7:34. It's our last short meeting for a while, guys. We're gonna have to dig in and we're gonna have some bigger ones. So looking for a motion to adjourn. And red lines. Oh, no.
All in favor? Motion to adjourn, students. Aye. Any opposed? All right, 2-0, 5-0. Yes, I interrupted. We are adjourned.